So today I have the pleasure of talking with Bex from Bambrel and Fox, and I'd like to start off, Bex, with you introducing yourself to the community, please.
Okay, well, I'm Bex. I'm originally from Manchester, and I now live in the Staffordshire area. And I set up Bramble and Fox, which is a UK hygge shop, in 2019. So hygge is a Danish word that roughly translates as coziness of the soul. So it's a bit of a concept store, and I've always had this. I read the book, The Little Book of Hygge, around 2016. And when I first read what hygge means, coziness of the soul, and it's that whole thing of making a conscious effort to make your life feel more cozy in lots of small, achievable ways, I thought, I've finally got a word for something I've basically done all my life. My nan, who's Scottish, was a real influence on me. And I think she embodies this way of living just naturally, and it sort of rubbed off. So to read a book and find out there was a whole community of people who were like-minded was brilliant. I had been on maternity leave with my little boy, who was a real sort of struggle to have, and was feeling sort of lost and a bit directionless. I had wanted to go back to my job after maternity leave, and for reasons just about flexibility and there not really being much, I was sort of casting around for an idea for a business. And I'd been on holiday to the Cotswolds and sort of wandered around, loving all the really sort of cozy shops, and I had a bit of a sliding doors moment when we were going home, where I thought, I don't really want to go back home to where I live, and I want to stay here really and have a shop. And I didn't really think that much about it. And then maybe about 4 months later, so that would have been the October, so early spring the next year, I woke up in the middle of the night, the most bizarre experience, where this name I woke up with the name, and I woke up with the idea for the shop. So I grabbed my phone, started putting down all the notes for it, and sort of went from there. My parents had run a business, but totally not retail related business. And I had always had a hankering for running a business, but not really known where to start. And that was it really. I thought, right, what do I need to do to take this idea and make it real? So I hope that answers it.
It certainly does. And what an amazing journey that you've had, and a fantastic experience so far by the sounds of things. You mentioned the COVID and pandemic, and you were obviously at the prime beginning of that, having just started your business. What would you say one of your biggest learnings were during that time?
Well, there were a lot, really. The first part of the lockdown, this is going to sound a bit bizarre, but it was initially a nicer experience, because I think everyone had sort of thought, well, you know, we've got all this time together to spend. And my husband, who's a joiner, was classed as sort of essential services later on, but at the beginning he was off with me and my son. So it made running the business a bit easier than it had been previously, because he was at home, and so he could look after our son while I could sort of do the things for the shop that are the sort of the back end side of things. So photographing stock, writing the product descriptions. So early on, I actually felt like I had a bit more time available than I had initially, trying to juggle being a parent and running the shop, because at that point my little boy wasn't at school. So initially it felt a bit easier, but then obviously as time went on, it wasn't easier. My husband was classed as essential services. He went back into joinery and construction as soon as the first lockdown lifted. And there were all sorts of things to do with the logistics of things. So particularly as a products-based business, if you're sending post out, there was the whole thing about how you logistically get the boxes to the post office and make it all contactless for people. So I was using the Royal Mail Drop and Go service, which allowed me to take my parcels in the big sack, have like a pro forma that you can fill in, and you just leave it with them instead of having to sort of queue up. And that's certainly a learning that I took from that point and built into the business anyway, because once it started growing, the orders started coming in more. You just don't have the time to stand and queue for possibly 30 minutes with a fractious toddler running around your legs whilst you're trying to hold the parcels. So that was a learning. I think.
No, that's amazing. And I think, just what you've said there, there's a lot of resilience, adaptability, and new learnings of new ways of doing things, which has been a lot of the recent stories that I'm hearing from a lot of businesses. What would you say throughout that time? We obviously had to adopt a lot of new processes. Is there something that you thought, actually, yeah, that worked really well, I'm going to take that forward in my business? You're going to keep it and continue with it?
Well, certainly, because at the beginning of, I set up in 2019, and although I was getting orders in, they weren't really of the regularity or volume that they then have gone on to be. So certainly I've then taken on the drop and go scenario with the post office, because that does make life easier. It just means that I have a pro forma that I can write out, whether it's first, second class delivery, and I can do that for multiple parcels and just take them all in one go instead of sort of dribs and drabs every so often, because that sort of really eats into the time in the day, particularly the sort of school runs. It just means that it's more efficient run that way. I think other things, although it's not necessarily a process consideration, I think it's a mindset consideration, which is at some point I had to try to lower my standards a little bit, which is someone who's been very sort of, I hold myself to quite high standards, probably unrealistic standards. And when we were at the height of lockdown and I'm trying to work out how to sort of photograph stock in an aesthetically pleasing way, whilst also thinking, how do I homeschool? I realised that really you just have to do what you can to get by, and sometimes the standards that you do set yourself, you have to look at them and think, in this context they may not necessarily be achievable, and have to sort of shift the bar a bit and know that it may not be a permanent thing, but for a period of time you may have to reconsider your values and your time and your mindset, and think, well, my values really are that I make sure that these things are done, and sometimes done is better than perfect.
Absolutely. And that is massive. It's those goals, but making them achievable in the situation you find yourself in. So what an amazing learning, which brings me on to, what would you say one of your greatest successes have been since the start of your business?
So I think it's a real achievement, having come from a completely different area where I know nobody, to now getting a local reputation within where I live with the shop.
Wow. Not only a new business, a new home and a new location, and new friends, new friendships to build as well. I can tell that you're super passionate about your business. If somebody was to ask you some advice, if they were just starting out in business, what piece of advice would you give to them that perhaps has been valuable to you?
There's a couple of pieces, really. I think the book Find Your Why by Simon, I never know if it's Simon Sinek or Simon Sinek, but I really, really found that book useful because I knew I wanted a business and the idea sort of found me, but it was trying to work out why it's that particular thing that I want to spend my time doing when I could probably, you know, because it is a fairly new business, I could have made more money doing something else straight away. So what is it about the business idea that you have that makes you so passionate, and why is it that idea? What's behind it, really? And I think that book, Find Your Why, really helps with trying to crystallize what's usually quite a nebulous thing at the beginning and how to take that and articulate it in a way, because quite often when you have the idea for your business, you tell people what you do, but you don't necessarily tell them why you do it. And it's usually quite a difficult thing to articulate why you've chosen to do this particular thing. So I would really recommend that book. And I think from a personal point of view, I think you have to be careful who you discuss your business ideas with. I love my husband very much, and he's extremely supportive. You know, he'll take us to Christmas markets or fairs at 6 a.m. and help with setting everything up. So he's really supportive. But when it comes to asking him opinions about things, I have to realise he is not my audience. And although he is incredibly supportive, what he would think about whether I do this or that with my business, because he isn't who I'm aiming at my business at, he isn't necessarily the best person to ask those questions to, or to talk something through. So I think trying to find a community of like-minded people really helps, because you want to speak really to the people that you're aiming your business at, rather than it being your loved ones, really.
That is massive. Thank you for sharing that. And just finally, if you could sum up your journey in 3 words, what would those be?
Satisfying, creative, and I would say authentic. I think that doing this has made me feel like the most authentic version of myself, really.
That's fantastic. Now, thank you so much, Bex. You were very kind when we spoke earlier. You had an offer for the community. Would you like to share with them what that is?
Yes, so over the Christmas period, in between Christmas and New Year, I'll be running a free workshop, which is called The Key to Your Year. And it's a workshop where we look at, instead of setting New Year's resolutions, we pick one word for the year that you'll use as sort of an anchor and a compass point to help direct your year. So I'll be running that, and that will be free to attend. And I'll give the dates to be confirmed, but I'll give the details of that to you, Claire. And then the second offer that I'll be running is any of the workshops that I have in the January period. There will be 10% off with the code NextLEVEL10.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. And Bex, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Here's to your future success. We wish you well, and congratulations on your achievements so far.
Thank you very much. It was lovely to be on.